breather. Today and yesterday have been the worst days of my life, or at least of my recent life. But they have managed not to completely and utterly break my spirit, just, 90-95%. So, continuing to have high-minded thoughts and wanting to share them with all of the millions of people who will no doubt see this video one day when I'm rich and famous, but for right now, probably nobody, but, anyway. It is my belief that in the entire history of the universe there have been two of what you might call miracles. You could make the argument for more, but they're basically just steps in between the two, and it's kind of semantic to break it down and say, first there was life and then there was intelligent life. So I'm just pretty much just going to look at the two ends of the spectrum. The first miracle, I'm just going to use that term even though I'm not religious. The first, you could also call it a scientifically unexplainable event. Naturally, scientists are trying to explain it, but they pretty much just have shot-in-the-dark theories because there's not really anything they can do. It's barely possible to record information that might hint at the truth. They certainly can't do experiments, so it's pretty much just all spitballing. But for lack of a better term, the first miracle is the fact that anything exists whatsoever. We can't figure out why the universe, the Big Bang Theory is there, but even science can't really give us much of an idea of why a Big Bang would happen. There are various ideas of, maybe it's a black hole from another universe, but that is just pushing the question back one step. What created that other universe? It's the same problem that you have with theological explanations. God created the universe. Well, who created God? The various religious types usually just kind of hand-wave that away as, God could create itself, and then why can't a universe create itself with no God? Anyway, so unless a universe can create itself with no force causing it, some unknown force would seem to have caused nothing to become something at some point, and so, call that a miracle. Might as well. The second one, that is the other end of the extreme as far as I'm concerned, is the fact that consciousness exists. There was this entire sort of clockwork universe of mindless dead matter for what scientists believe to be, like 4 billion years before there was even a planet Earth, and then 4 billion more years before we came along and started fucking things up. So we are, as far as we can tell, the only, if not the only fully sapient creature, then at least the only sophont creature. I said the wrong word. If not the only fully sentient creature, you can argue about whether, we know that a cat can feel pain, but does a cat know that it feels pain? Is it a fully autonomic reflex that's just programmed chemically into the brain, or is there actually like something more there that's, for lack of a better term, transcendent? We know cats can dream, and I kind of lean towards making that a criteria of being at least like one step towards the self-proclaimed miracle of human consciousness. But I don't think that cats or any other life form is more than maybe like halfway there. That's just my opinion. Anyway, so for whatever reason, human beings have consciousness, they have abstract reasoning, they have the ability to invent things like language that, written language, absolutely nothing, no other species have ever come even close to written language, and ultimately all of our various science and technology accomplishments could not have happened if we were not able to communicate with people without having to be physically there and physically alive at the same time. So written language is a really big thing, but I am of the opinion, just me, that consciousness is the missing ingredient that made that possible, and we don't know where consciousness came from. We don't really know what it is. There are scientists who have done experiments where they put electrodes in a brain, in a certain part of the brain, stimulate the electrode, and the person just sort of turns off and loses all memory and loses all awareness of what's going on, and then you stop the current and they come back and they experienced no time lapse. They have no idea what just happened. So if I'm reporting pop science that I haven't really looked into. If that is true to the extent that I have heard that it is, then that's somewhat damning scientific evidence contrary to the concept that consciousness is this mystical, otherworldly thing. But I am of the opinion that that's not true. I think even if consciousness is the result of an electrical signal in a certain part of your brain, it's sort of like how music exists independent of the instrument that you play it on. If you write down, if you hum a tune, and then someone else plays that tune on their guitar, and then somebody else plays the tune on a piano, and then somebody writes the tune down in musical notation, and then all of humanity dies, and millions of years in the future, cockroach people find the piece of paper that you wrote the musical notes on, start experimenting and figure out what it is, and begin to play the tune on whatever rough equivalent of the bongo drums they might have invented for themselves, assuming they even care. I could get off on a whole other topic about how quasi-mystical a thing music is, because there's no real reason why it should be, why random sounds should sound musical or not musical to us. But that's a tangent. As usual, I'm going off on tangents. So, so we don't know exactly what consciousness is, and that analogy about the music, the tune itself does not exist in any of the instruments used to play it. It does not exist in the sheet paper that is used to write it down and transmit it to other minds. The tune itself is a thing that exists in those other mediums, but is itself only like a pattern. It is that its existence is as a non-physical thing. That's what I believe is true of consciousness. You can think a thought, and the cause of your thinking of the thought might supposedly be a little electrical discharge between two particular synapses in your brain. But it is my belief that the thought itself exists as a pattern and could exist without having a brain to exist in, and consciousness is sort of the ultimate example of what I think that is. I believe that my knowledge of my consciousness proves it to be true. There's only one being which I am absolutely certain actually has consciousness and is not just cleverly mimicking it, and that is myself. I am absolutely 100% sure that I am conscious because I am conscious of the fact that I am conscious. It's sort of, in my opinion, that's the sort of thing that you have when you're dealing in miracles. You have a self-defining. I can kind of see where the Christians are coming from saying God created himself, because that's kind of the only way that you can have an absolute bedrock. In my case, my absolute bedrock is my own consciousness, perceived by itself and thus absolutely certainly known not to be something, that you've probably heard of the brain in the jar thought experiment. If you hooked things up to my visual cortex, you could make me see things that aren't there. If you hook things up to my auditory cortex, you could make me hear things that aren't there. But I believe that the actual, the entity that is seeing and hearing and doing whatever else as a result of the electrical impulses you feed into the jarred brain, it's all those signals are going somewhere. There's a thing inside yourself that has the capacity to fully be aware of things and fully conceptualize things, and they don't necessarily have to originate in reality, although often they do. So those are what I believe the two miracles are: the creation of the cosmos and the creation of the possibility for us to be aware that the cosmos exists and that we exist and everything else. And many scientists have come up with the idea that sort of human existence is like the cosmos's way of experiencing itself. That's sort of their version of the meaning of life, and I think it's a pretty good one.